Hey. Hi, thank you so much for coming out on such a gorgeous Sunday afternoon and joining us for the Come Grow With Us educational series here at Constant Gardener. For those of you who are new, my name is Erika, and I'm the Community Outreach Director and the Commercial Sales Rep for Constant Gardener, and I have the honor of teaching this class. We'll be celebrating our one-year anniversary this August, so we're very excited to have grown from a small class of about 4 to now 37 people in this room. I think I barely believe it. So thank you again, all of you, for attending. So I always like to start with a quick round of introductions before diving into today's agenda. So of course the topic is simple compost tea brewing. So I'd like to get a sense of who are my brewers in the audience, who are new to compost tea brewing. So if you would just share really briefly, we've got a lot of us today, your name and whether you've brewed before. And if you have brewed, name one input that you'd like to add. And if you're new to compost tea brewing, shout out something that you'd like to learn and I'll do my best to cover it today. So again, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Erika, and I'm really into fermented flower extract teas. And then we'll start right here. All right. So again, welcome to Simple Compost Tea Brewing 101. So compost tea is an incredible magic liquid formulation that does amazing things for your plants and garden. Does anybody know one of the benefits for compost tea? Absolutely. Azos. Conventional horticulture has significantly depleted our soils. The monocropping has reduced diversity. If you're only growing corn, there's only going to be a certain set of microbes that want to associate with that plant. So we've literally deadened or killed our soils. So rejuvenating soil life. Absolutely. Any other benefits? Pest control. Absolutely. Yeah, there's these great creatures that are yeasts, you're welcome, that will parasitize soft-body pests on the foliage and in the soil. Great. Anybody else? One more benefit of compost tea? And will you say more?
It improves the rhizomes of the plant, the whole area.
Absolutely, and as is below, so shall be above. So the answer was improves the rhizosphere on a lot of areas. Thanks, Robert. Beautiful. So yeah, we've got a lot to cover today. So of course the benefits of compost tea, and then I want to introduce you all to the microbes, the cast of characters that make the magic happen. We'll talk a little bit about water quality and aeration, so we're going to do just a quick recap from last month. We'll talk about compost tea for different goals. About 5 years ago it hit me, I have all these folks coming in asking me about compost tea recipes. And if I don't know what their end goal is, how am I going to steer them right? So I've identified a set of different goals for compost tea. We'll talk about some recipes, ingredients. There are very simple compost tea recipes and they're very complex compost tea recipes. And I invite you to play with all of them. Plant ferment, that would be a class in and of itself. I'm going to touch on it very briefly just to get you started and give you some resources. We'll finish up with some microbial inoculants, where to get the microbes that jumpstart your teas. And then we'll go over some local brewing resources and conclude with the most common mistakes people make when brewing compost tea. So there's an acronym out there, AACT. Some of you may be familiar with this term. It's actively aerated compost tea, and it has such an incredible range of benefits. Thank you for those of you who shared just now. So yeah, number one, remediating dead soils. Again, salts, nitrates, the chemical pesticides that are used often as fumigators into the soil are literally leaving us with dead strip soils. So we have to bring the soil life back. And of course, monocropping and diversity. And as soon as we pull out diversity, we've created an imbalance, right? So if I have a nutritional deficiency, say I'm not consuming enough calcium, I'm going to have some symptoms, right? I'm going to have an imbalance in my body, and in my older age, I might get brittle bones. I may have some significant deficiencies that affect my health and well-being, my immune response. So anytime the scales are tipped, problems arise. And that's when you're asking for pest and disease attacks. So it's really important to rejuvenate soil and bring all that back. So meeting the cast of characters. So I'm going to talk about 4 groups of microbes today, and these are really the lead players in your compost tea formula. And different inputs will produce different ratios of these microbes. So first off, beneficial bacteria. Bacteria are incredible, and there's a whole ton of different categories. Of course, there's photosynthetic bacteria, who are actually capable of photosynthesis and producing sugars, which is remarkable. There are also beneficial bacteria that help with fixing nitrogen. So those of you who are getting the Azos sample today, those are nitrogen fixers. Now this is a specific species called Azospirillum basilense. There are other species out there. Is anyone familiar with the relationship with the legume plant family and the Rhizobia bacteria? A few heads nodding? Yeah, it's a really incredible association. So the Rhizobia bacteria are attracted to live on pea plants, the legume family, and they actually pull atmospheric nitrogen out of the air and convert it into a plant usable form. So instead of using salt-based nitrates or using a ton of grass clippings or blood meal, you're able to literally just pull nitrogen out of the plants. It's pretty incredible. And the phosphorus solubilizers are great. A lot of the phosphorus inputs that come from our backyard take a long time to break down, and they're not plant usable until that digestion process has occurred. So you do need little guys in there eating and breaking down, making the phosphorus soluble. And then, as mentioned before, pathogen protectors. Pictured up top right, Bacillus subtilis is one of my favorite and one of the most commonly used pathogen protectors, specifically against powdery mildew problems. And they literally consume it. So it's a really great biological treatment for molds and mildews. And then, of course, bacteria are great digesters. Their job is to break things down. And if I bury a bunch of bones underneath my corn patch, the plant can't consume that bone. It has to be literally broken down. And something like a bone or a rock could take 6 months to 24 months to break down in my soil, depending on my microbial properties. So again, they do a really important job of recycling inputs back into the earth. And then to go over the fungi really quickly, so this is a huge kingdom. Of course, it's home to one of my favorite creatures in the world, mycorrhiza. I'll talk briefly about that. So the first 12 of you who signed up got a mycorrhizal inoculant that's in a wettable powder form. What's neat about that is after your plants are in the ground or they're in their finishing container indoors, you can make a water suspension and water it in. Because generally we sprinkle it on at the time of transplant so we can make direct root contact. But once it's set, this is a great way to revitalize it. And mycorrhiza should be re-inoculated every 4 weeks. Outdoors, it goes through its own native life cycle. Indoors, we can't recommend that. It's not going to sporulate. It's not going to reproduce itself indoors in your 5-gallon smart pot. So it's really important that you rejuvenate those colonies every month. The yeasts that I want to talk about today too, there's a ton of yeast out there. The one pictured in the bottom there is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. It's found in different cultures like bokashi mixes. It's a really good digester. It breaks down plant cellulose really quickly. So if you're doing plant ferments, it's a really good way to help speed up that process. And then the other category of yeast that I'm really excited about 2 years ago I started seeing them hit the market. The market is bioinsecticides or myco-insecticides, so fungi that kill bugs. And this is a really amazing relationship. Now, some of you may tune into Planet Earth videos every once in a while. You can YouTube this. So basically there's these species, you do a foliar spray or a soil drench to make contact of the yeast with the bugs. And it wakes up, it anchors down, and it literally parasitizes the bug. And these great videos on YouTube about ants getting parasitized by fungi. And the last stage is this little fruiting body that comes out of their head. It's pretty wild. And it works faster than you might think. Bacteria tend to wake up and be active quicker than yeasts and fungi. But this particular yeast, in this product right here called Beauveria bassiana or Metarrhizum are 2 species that are in this product. They take about 2 to 4 days to wake up in the right humidity levels and start their work. After 4 days of inoculating with that tea recipe, I have some great footage of root aphid colonies that were totally mummified by mycelium. So it works quick for a biological. It's a great way to go. So the other thing I want to touch on a little bit when we're using bacteria and fungi on flowers that are going to be tested for market. Are any of you aware that up until about April we had a yeast and mold requirement through OHA? So they had basically tests required where your flower could not have a yeast and mold count. Unfortunately, they didn't differentiate between beneficials and unbeneficials. So it was a bit of a barrier for organic gardeners to use these types of biological treatments in their flower rooms. But that has been lifted with which is a small victory for organic gardening in our community. But I would just like to share, any of you who are going to market with your flowers, there will be dispensaries who will still require that test. And there are labs like OG Analytical right down the street that are still offering that test free as an optional service. Now, it won't fail you if you red flag, but it will be posted. And then you'd want to have a good relationship with your dispensary owner, whomever you are vending to talk about your organic practices. And I've spoken with about 4 local dispensary owners, and they're all very excited about organic gardeners bringing their flowers to market. So if you have that conversation, it shouldn't be a big deal. But that just kind of gives you guys a sense of how layered and complex testing requirements are in your state. So the other 2 categories I wanted to go over real quick here are protozoa and nematodes. Back to Biology 101. So protozoa are really unique little creatures. They're really important in mineralizing nutrients. So they're able to solubilize them, make them available. They also outcompete pathogenic bacteria. And again, with compost tea or any kind of microbial inoculations, the goal is to fill all the spaces with the good guys. So there's no room for the bad guys to fit. And it really works. They also regulate soil-borne bacterial populations. So again, when there's those imbalances, when one microbe runs rampant because there's a stressor or a pest present or a symptom that we're not treating. So those are really important and generally present in compost sources that we use to brew with. And then of course, predatory nematodes. These are one of my favorite microbes in the world. Has anyone played with predatory microbes or nematodes? Yeah? What was your experience? You seem excited. I love it.
They were fabulous.
Yeah.
Between that and the tape, gone.
Fungus gnats, I'm guessing?
Root aphids.
Root aphids even. Wow, yeah. Yeah,
It was incredible.
fabulous.
Yeah.
They're one of my first lines of defense after a few contact kills. They seek and destroy. They're mobile.
So quick.
Yeah,
I loved it.
yeah. And then
Very
these little
tasty.
guys, they're a little microscopic roundworm. And again, they parasitize a soft-bodied pest. And then they replicate inside. And then boom, 1,000 new nematodes burst out crawling throughout your soil trying to find new food sources. If there is no food source, we'll take a nap for about a year. And then when food is present, we'll wake up again. And they're pretty durable. There's not a lot that kills them. They are tank compatible with most pesticides. They're tank compatible with most fertilizers. The few things I've noticed that can knock them back, chloramine and chlorine aren't good for them. They can probably withstand at low levels. But soap, believe it or not, is the one thing that comes up in my research that kills them. And it's probably a combination of it being a suffocant and also very alkaline on the pH scale. So watch your soap, use yucca as a wetting agent instead when administering nematodes.
So if you have rather alkaline water, is that going to harm them?
It depends on why it's alkaline and what minerals it's high in.
Okay.
But for the most part, you should be fine. I think it's that dual action of smothering and a pH imbalance.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you are adding soap to your water and your pH is above 7,
We're not adding
Oh.
soap, but our pH is consistently above 8.
gotcha. Okay. And if you're on a spring or well, that could be a great thing.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And then your fermentation process will bring that pH way down.
Okay.
Actually, I'll talk about that real quick. If I start with neutral tap water that I've dechlorinated, and I'm bubbling my tea for a couple of days, through the production of organic acids, that pH of 7 is going to plummet. And I've seen my compost teas come out anywhere between 3 and 4. Now, like kombucha, we talked about this a few classes ago, you can administer concentrated compost tea that is acidic to plants safely. That being said, it's always best practice to pH adjust any liquid solution you administer to your plants. So as a rule, I do pH it. I've also tested it and it's fine. Just like kombucha, when it hits the bacteria, they're converting it back to a neutral state. So it's not going to hurt your plants, but I would definitely test it on something you're not in love with first. All right, so nematodes, yeah. We keep them in the fridge here at Constant Gardener 12 months out of the year. I always keep a tub in my fridge. A couple of years ago, we found a new company that has a 1-year shelf life on their nematodes, so I just always have them on hand for soil-dwelling pests. I wanted to just recap really quickly from last month. This may be another opportunity to win some nitrogen fixers. So water quality is everything. If I start with bad water, I'm gonna have compost tea. And brewers of all sorts know this. So if you brew beer or you brew kombucha and you start with inferior water, you're gonna have inferior beverage. So it's really important that you start with good quality water. And we're very fortunate in Oregon. We have very clean municipal water, especially here in Eugene. We do have a ton of chlorine in our water systems. Now, fortunately, we don't have chloramine. I've called all the local utility boards, and thank goodness, because does anybody remember how much longer it takes to get chloramine out of your water than chlorine? You can, but there's a few steps you have to take with filtration systems, Camden tablets. But does anyone remember how much longer?
How much water too, isn't it?
The volume is
Yeah.
huge, and if you've got it choked down in like one of those 5-gallon for the drinking stations, and it's choked down, and it's just a small 1-inch opening, that's going to really slow your chlorine dispersal down. But it takes 3 times as long to get rid of chloramine as chlorine through any of the practices you might use. So 3 times the Camden tablets, or 3 times the filtration power on your reverse osmosis unit. So thank goodness we don't have to deal with this in Lane County, because it takes a whole lot more work. And who can tell me why we want to get chlorine out of the water in the first place?
It'll kill stuff, won't it? It
And
won't
what
let your-
specifically will it kill?
Yeah, the really little guys.
Yes.
The beneficial little
Yes,
guys.
yes, yes, yes. We have a winner. That's perfect. Yeah. And it's good to remember, chlorine is a naturally occurring mineral, right? And plants do need it in trace amounts. But as soon as we start loading our water supply with it, it causes a lot of microbial die-off. So it's really important to avoid that.
How long does it take to evaporate out of water if you have it in hot?
It's a very complicated equation that brings water temperature, elevation, surface tension, and surface area into play. But generally, if you're dealing with like 10 gallons or less, and it's a wide-mouthed container, 24 hours. I just let them sit out overnight. If it's a little gallon jug and it's a pitcher where it has a large surface area, 8 hours overnight's not a problem. But I've used those Calistoga gallon bottles that have that small neck. I've left it out for 8 hours, capped it, put it in my car, and the next day I go to take a swig and I get this huge chlorine gas release. So use your nose, that'll help.
What about the 50-gallon drums?
For the 50-gallon drums, we do 24 hours, and that is more than sufficient. And what is a way you can speed up that process even more? Oh, I wish I had asked those for all of you. Good job. Indeed. Yeah, it really makes a difference. And then, of course, the benefit of adding oxygen, dissolved oxygen, back into your container. And, of course, we're shooting for 8 parts per million of dissolved oxygen. Those meters are very expensive and insanely difficult to calibrate. So nobody in this room needs a dissolved oxygen meter unless you really want to dork out on different air pumps and how to achieve different parts per million levels. And I've been there. So let's talk a little bit about compost tea goals again. And this hit me like a ton of bricks 5 years ago that I couldn't help you guys unless I knew what you wanted. So I started asking questions. What's the goal of compost tea? New tea brewers maybe didn't have a clear answer, but they heard that compost tea brings back soil life and helps remediate dead soils. So that tells me the goal is microbes, to re-inoculate the soil with a diverse array of microbes. So that's our first goal, is rejuvenating soil life. And then you can go a lot of different directions with this. So there are ways you can brew teas that are more bacterial dominant, depending on what inputs you use. And bacterial dominance is really helpful for warm season annual plants like cannabis. They make a lot of associations with bacteria. They depend on the bacteria to prevent pests and disease and to also break down nutrients in the soil. So indoors, bacterial dominant teas are pretty much the goal. Now, fungal dominant teas also have a really equally important role. I'm going to talk a little bit about mycorrhiza in tea here in a second, but generally when we're talking about fungal dominant teas, we're dealing with perennial plants, woody trees and shrubs. They make incredible associations with fungi. And when you go out to the forest and you walk on that nice soft bloomy floor, that is going to be fungal dominant. If you were to swoop up that floor and use that as a compost source, that's going to be your dominant species. You're going to get a good array of bacteria as well, but that's where the dominance is. Where in the annual garden, you're going to have generally more bacterial species. Now with mycorrhiza, there's a bit of a debate in our community about whether or not it makes sense to add it to compost tea. Does anybody have strong opinions on this? Because there's some really strong opinions out there. Okay, so I talked to my MyPost rep, the extreme gardening rep. I wanted to get their take on it because I have my own opinions. But as far as I know, nowhere in the world, in the oceans, lakes, or rivers, does mycorrhiza grow. It doesn't colonize in the water. It needs a plant root to make an association with. So if I throw it in my compost tea and there's no root producing an exudate for it to smell, for it to wake up and do its job, what am I really doing? Now I see the benefits of using the compost tea as a water delivery system. So I generally end my mycorrhiza at the very end. And then it's just a convenient way to get it in there. So you folks who got the wettable powder, that would be a great thing to add right at the end. Now there are some beliefs out there that even in the absence of a root system, mycorrhiza can start to chain up. I've talked to a lot of reps who believe that very, very strongly, and I respect their opinions. I haven't personally spent enough time under the microscope to 100% believe it, but I invite people to play with it and tell me what types of experiences you have with it. Now either way, mycorrhiza wakes up pretty quickly once it's wet and it's near a root. So whether you're jump starting it or not, get it in the water because it's a great thing to add. I wouldn't do it weekly just because that wouldn't be very cost effective, but I would do it monthly as a general rule. Any questions on that debate? All right.
Yeah, that's, the person I was working with was like that, he said, when we do the myco, we don't water with any nutrients. And if that's okay, you're saying that how you would be okay to add nutrients and deliver that.
It depends on the nutrients. Yep,
So
if
not,
you're
not
using.
liquid, not liquid, but compost too would be
Yes, depending on the inputs. If you put a ton of blood meal in there, I would tell you no.
okay.
And I'll touch on this in a little bit, that you want to keep nitrogen away from mycorrhiza for the first 48 hours that it's getting established.
Can all this be a foliar spray as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Again, if you're in late flower, you may want to, have that conversation with the dispensary, but absolutely. And with compost tea in late flower, because I'll forget it later if I don't say it now, I'll generally shoot the mist up above the plants and let it very softly mist down. That way I'm not broadcast spraying to runoff. I don't need to do that, it's wasteful. I just need to gently inoculate to leave space. Thanks for that.
What are you using?
A sprayer, any kind of a compression sprayer.
What those products?
We're going to get to the inoculants and the ingredients here shortly, so
Oh,
hold
okay.
that back. Yes. So other goals out there. So we've got the bacterial fungal balance teas. I definitely recommend those for indoor gardening as well as outdoor gardening. But indoors, it's a good idea to keep your compost teas very simple. We need predictable biology indoors because we are, by definition, trying to control that environment. Outdoors, the sky's your limit. We want every creature under the sun to live with us. So the high phosphorus tea goal is kind of a fun one too. We'll talk about that in a minute with the fermented flower and fruit extracts. But there's a lot of different inputs you can find in your backyard, especially in the summer months, that are loaded with phosphorus because you fed it phosphorus and it's now contained in the fruit. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. High nitrogen teas as well is a goal of a lot of gardeners, especially outdoors this time of year. You want to get a nice vegetative boost. And generally that high nitrogen in teas is coming from a high nitrogen back guano. And I always like to remind people back guanos can be very salty. It can sometimes burn, so it's a good idea to go half strength and just be mindful of flushing every couple of weeks to get nice full salts out of there. I do have a note up here, coming back to what you were asking about mycorrhiza. With high nitrogen teas, be very careful of mycorrhiza. If it's an organic nutrient line and it's just PK heavy, phosphorus and potassium heavy, you should be fine around mycorrhiza. It's the nitrogen that really affects them. But again, if there's any kind of high salt content, that could be a problem for some of the other bacteria as well.
So you're saying yes, flowers and granulars that have a high nitrogen content would feed into the compost for the food.
If it says 1600, I'd be scared.
Yeah.
If it's under 5%, you'll probably be fine.
Okay.
Because it's a solid and it will take time for the bacteria to break it down before it's so available that it can burn something. Yeah. Surely. Another really great goal, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, is pest protection for compost teas. So there's a lot of bacteria that target pests. Does anybody remember BT from our pest control class a couple months ago? So Bacillus thuringiensis, and there's two subspecies. Israeliensis is really good for in the soil dwelling pests. And then BT kerstaki is a foliar application that's really good for targeting caterpillars. It's also important to remember that a lot of these bacteria are soil dwellers that we're spraying on leaves. So it is important to keep things nice and moist and humid and re-inoculate frequently, because nothing's more powerful than the sun and UV light to BT Kurstaki for caterpillars. Kurstaki for caterpillars. Kurstaki.
How do you find out if the plant is bacterial, dominant, or fungal?
Usually it's the difference between whether it's an annual or a perennial, for the most part. So if it's a perennial and it's a conifer, it's generally going to be a fungal dominant.
What about trees?
Ooh, that's kind of a gray area, isn't it? I would say a balance of bacteria and fungi for that plant. And it's never an absolute. It's never either or. There's always going to be a mix, depending on grade. And then lastly, pathogen protection, biofungicides. So these are often bacteria or yeast species or microparasites, actual fungi that eat other fungi. It's pretty amazing when you start looking closer under the microscope. But again, my theory of filling all the spots with good guys so that you don't have room for the bad guys. They're amazing at defending you against diseases. On the same token, there are some species that actually parasitize, like trichoderma will start to eat things like botrytis or powdery mildew for you. So they're either eating or outcompeting the bad guys. So it's really important to have a good blend. So these are going to be different microbes that target disease, like powdery mildew and botrytis. Bokashi is an excellent example of a microbial colony. It brings in bacteria and yeasts. And they live in symbiosis, and they will outcompete, break down dry goods in the soil, and they love to eat powdery mildew and botrytis. Yeah, really good inputs.
Erika, you mentioned trichoderma at the customer appreciation. One of the micros guys, I can't remember which one it was, but he said that the trichoderma can actually eat some of your other beneficials and
Competition indoors is an important consideration, and that's why I recommend that indoors you keep it really simple. We have some inoculants that have a laundry list of 20 different microbes on the back, and I'm using different nutrients than you're using than he's using. And so it'd be impossible for that company to predict the ebb and flows and the peaks and valleys of different species population bursts. So indoors I like to keep it pretty simple, worm castings and one species of mycorrhiza. We've learned from the Mycos reps that when you have 4 different subspecies of Glomus in the same inoculant, they start competing with each other. And generally, Glomus intradices is the one that survives. So they just go with a single origin mycorrhiza source so that you can avoid the competition to begin with. Although, not to detour too much, there are gardeners out there who believe that even if it dies, it becomes food for somebody else, and that food web continues.
With the biofungicides, would you consider the difference being a preventative versus solution? Because I've read that there's really no good solution to biofungicides.
As far as like the problem's too bad, what do I do
Or
now?
even if you have it, it's almost too late.
You know, for a lot of products, absolutely. Like Serenade is Bacillus subtilis, and if you already have a strong outbreak, beneficials can take time to get established, and if they're up against an army bigger than them, they're probably going to lose, right?
Yeah.
But if, let's say, you have 100,000 powdery mildew spores and you send 10 million bokashi culture spores in there, you're gonna win and tip the scales.
Okay.
But there's absolutely a point of no return.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've been using a product called Cease. It's exactly the same as Serenade or whatever,
Yeah.
but not owned by Bayer. So
Right. And it's a single microbe.
Yeah.
Again, outdoors especially, if you can come at it with a few different species for pathogen protection,
okay,
you can sometimes get a little more of an aggressive treatment out of it.
okay.
Yeah, but bokashi is my favorite thing for powdery mildew. Yeah.
Something that you would use for outdoors for those green little beetles that kind of look like ladybugs.
The cucumber beetles, or the 12-spotted beetle they're called.
Spiders.
Yeah, so predatory nematodes applied twice a year, really early season. Depending on soil temperatures, nematodes like it above 50. So I'll get my cooking thermometer and wait till the soil's warm enough for them to be active. And then as soon as I can get them out there, I'll do a release. They will interrupt the larval stage of cucumber beetle before they crawl up out of the soil. You have to really be on the timing of that and know their life cycle in your microclimate at your
Yeah, they're
home.
already out at my house, and like a month
Yeah.
earlier than last year. I mean, it seems like I don't know.
Yeah.
But our hibiscus plants are blooming early this year. They're already blooming, so.
Certainly. After class, ask us about safe use of diatomaceous earth in an outdoor.
Okay.
That'll work really well.
blend soil in it.
Any questions
And I
there?
had a bunch to come.
All right, so I wanted to move into our basic ingredients. So again, indoors, I do recommend you keep compost tea very, very simple so that it's predictable. Find success and then build on top of that success and start building your different recipes and write your recipes down. I can't tell you how many times I got the most beautiful frothy head on my tea and didn't record my inputs. So none of us are renowned for our memories. Write it down, have a good notebook, and you'll be able to capture your success and hopefully replicate it. So microbes, of course, are the basis of everything we're building here. So I just wanted to pass a few of these around. So worm castings have been mentioned several times now. So worm castings, the poop of the worm, is just teeming with bacteria, and the diversity is amazing. Everything from digesters to pathogen protectors to pest deterrents as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. And not all worm castings are created the same. You'll notice that some are finely sifted, and you have these beautiful tiny little granules. Other times you'll buy worm castings and it's just loaded with bedding. That is called a worm compost. And you do have to be a little wary about marketing. A lot of times they'll call it worm castings. You put your hand in it and it's a bunch of fir bark and pockets of lime. And it is not castings in their pure form. It's a compost, which is awesome. And you're probably gonna get more fungal dominance out of that bedding material by bringing in the beneficial bacteria from the worm castings. Now you have a balanced tea. So that's a great way to jumpstart your teas. This is this is Malibu. This is the Malibu Biodynamic Compost from California. So I'll also pass this around. And this is a blend of organic material, cow manure, and biodynamic preparations. It's a really great compost, and it's what we use to start our compost tea. Any of you came in the front door probably saw our tea brew set up. So those are our basic ingredients, literally. Those are going to be the majority of our dry goods. And I generally do equal parts of castings to compost. You can also come in with a ton of different inoculants. Again, you could add the wettable powder, mycorrhiza at the very end, or you can add it earlier if you want. The OG BioWar inoculants are awesome. I just called Grant Jackson at the Department of Ag, who does inspection for different products, and I'm working to get this on the guidelines list for 2016. The foliar pack, a little confusing marketing because you can absolutely water this into soil as well. This is the one that contains the myco-insecticides, the fungus that eat bugs. So it's a great inoculant. You could just add 4 teaspoons per gallon and spray it on your plant today, or you could brew it. And the benefit of brewing it is I could take a population of 50,000 and I could culture it into a population of 2 million, saving myself money. This product's not cheap, but it's very, very effective.
What does that foliar pack contain?
It has a range of microbes. It's got the myco-insecticides, the species Bovaria bassiana and Metarrhizum 52. And then it also has Bacillus subtilis in it. Quite a laundry list as well. Azobacter, Procoum, 2 different subspecies of Pseudomonas, Rhodospirillum rubrum, a couple photosynthetic bacteria, I believe.
Who's it made by? What was the name?
OG BioWare is the company, and it's out of California. And their products are all carried by talc. Most microbial inoculants have a carrier, because if I were to buy just a bag of pure spores, it'd be about this big, it wouldn't be very marketable. So they cut it down with generally humic acids. Humic acid-based inoculants, be very careful on your application rate. If you go heavy-handed, you will burn your plants. I've even had humic-based products where if you do a direct root application, it'll burn. So ask your garden associate, ask your friends, their experience with the products. If it has humic in it, be a little mindful of application rate. What I like about OG BioWare is they carry it with talc, basically baby powder, very inert.
So if you use humic acid like Full Power from BioAg, should you cut back on the amount of like tea or like OG BioWare products?
Because they're talc and not humic, you'd be okay still using your Full Power. But let's say you were using a product that was humic and mycorrhiza, and then you were also adding zeast juice, and then you were also adding cytosine, which you're all getting today, which also has fulvic acid from BioAg in it. And then you also did like a dry humic acid top dress. That would be too much.
Okay.
Yeah, so try not to stack your humic inputs.
You add your preparations, your teas to your burn bins and your compost pile to get the beneficial
So water the compost tea into the worm bin?
or in the compost pile.
There'd be ingredients in there that they might like, for sure. I've personally never tried that. I guess I try to keep it pretty simple, and I just hydrate it with the garden hose and add my oyster shell and newspaper clippings. I haven't tried it. There may be some ingredients they'd be sensitive to, but if you're using all natural, low NPK products, they're probably fine, because we water them into our soil all the time with worms, and they don't escape the heat.
I was just thinking, it's biodynamic preparation. Compost
Yeah.
would probably be good in anything.
Oh yeah, if you want to throw a little horsetail in there, some feldspar, yeah, the sky's the limit. All right, so we've got the microbe category down. I'll pass the foliar pack around too. One thing you're gonna notice though, there's a lot of politics around labeling. There's a lot of really great companies out there that put awesome ingredients in their products, and the part of the ag doesn't let them list them. So you won't see the 2 mycoinsecticides that I mentioned on the package bag. There's a lot of products out there like that, where you end up getting an incredible diversity of microbes, but it just says Bacillus subspecies. I'll pass this around too. Next, sugars. Sugars are really, really important. Both bacteria and fungi depend on carbon sources. Has anybody ever left the coffee in the container for a couple days and just watched that blue-green mold grow on top of it? That's because they love nitrogen, they love the carbon that you get out of coffee, and so they'll just eat that right up. Sugars as well for bacteria is really important, and there's a lot of different options when you're adding sugar to your teas. And again, I really encourage you to keep it economical, because the goal of brewing your own teas is to not buy bottled nutrients, become more sustainable, and close your loop. That's the goal. So as far as sugar sources, I really just recommend you guys get molasses. This is $5.50 for a pint, and you only use a tablespoon per gallon. So this will last you quite a while. You can also get it in 5-gallon buckets, and you can get it in 275-gallon shuttles if you're on the commercial scale. So yeah, molasses is great for tea brewing. Now, if I was just mixing up a little batch of nectar to water into my soils and feeding that day, I would not choose molasses. Does anybody remember why from our microbes class? Or,
Takes too long to become palatable.
yeah, yes, absolutely. It takes a little bit longer to break down and become plant usable. Absolutely.
Doesn't it smother the root zone too?
Yeah, it literally clogs your root stomata, which is your vital pathways for getting food up there. So it's not advisable. It can also smother your fungal colonies. So molasses needs to be pre-digested before you put it in your soil. And that's what we're going to do with the composted dress. I also have a lot of people who want to use the Aphrodite's extraction product from Nectar for the Gods in their teas. It's an amazing sugar source, but it's $20 a quart. Molasses is $5.50 a pint. So I definitely recommend you guys economize. Aphrodite works great. And sometimes after my 48-hour brew time, I'll add just a little bit of Aphrodite to rejuvenate it for another 12 to 24 hours. And it works wonderful. But again, it's not costly.
What about coconut sugar?
Yes, coconut, agave, honey, people are playing around with all sorts of different sugar sources. Absolutely.
Being antifungal, will that affect it?
You know, it's interesting with natural antibiotics. Generally, the natural ones are pretty benign to beneficials. For example, grapefruit seed extract, that'll kill strep, but it's really mild on my gut bacteria when I take it as medicine. So nature kind of has this way of working that out on its own, but it's always advisable to play it safe. I've never personally brewed with honey. Has anybody heard of anybody playing with honey? It'd be so expensive. Yeah, definitely. Or try agave. I mean, my goodness. But again, to each their own. And there's pros and cons. The glycemic index is very different on agave. I do like to throw some humic acids, even in my basic tea, again, for helping speed up the breakdown process, the decomposition. And humics are really valuable for nutrient facilitation. They do a great job at the root zone of teasing those tiny root pores, the stomata, open so that you can drive nutrient. And then lastly, I'd love for there to be kelp. Generally, we're doing compost tea at the time of a transplant, or maybe during the hotter weeks of the summer where there's usually some stress going on or some transition going on. And kelp is an amazing way to remediate stress. It's also a great natural source of vitamins, hormones, and minerals. So I always like for there to be kelp. Just be aware there are some kelp products out there that have foaming agents in them. We're going to talk about not making messes here at the end.
Is bladder rack okay?
Pardon?
Bladder rack,
Bladder?
it's a type of seed with bladder rack.
Is that a genus species? A genus? Or?
It's a very inexpensive kelp powder you can get.
I've never heard of it. Yeah.
Bladder rack, you can order it from Sea Naturals.
Okay. Is it Norwegian sea kelp?
I think it might come from that area. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to look into that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sea Naturals, they have a bunch of seeds.
Oh, that's good to hear. I'll have to write that down after class. MaxiCrop is kind of an old standby. They do have a liquid version and a soluble powder. Most of your kelp meals out there are not water soluble. So this is just a meal. These are chunks of broken down dried kelp. So that's not going to go into suspension. And by suspension, I mean evenly mixed in the water in a plant usable form. So this will, and it works really well. It's pretty expensive at $21. You're all getting Poseidon kelp today, which is a great way to add kelp back into your water. But again, MaxiCrop is another great tried and true standby. It does have 17% potassium in it, and I believe they're achieving that through potassium hydroxide. So that's not a natural potash boost, just FYI.
What are some of the humic acids that you know about?
Like product names?
Yeah.
So Zeus Juice from the Nectar for the God line is a great source. You can also get humic in products like Liquid Karma from Botanicare. Most microbial inoculants will have some humic
I mean,
acids.
it's just, is there any everyday food that we have that's that we might
Compost.
you can find a lot of humic acid.
Compost. Yep, that's going to be a great source. All right, so there's a couple variations and a lot of different recipes out there. I just wanted to give you all OCG's recipe real quick. Okay?
Is down to earth kelp meal mix, is that water soluble?
Is it in a brown box like this?
Yeah.
Most likely not. But you'll know real quick when you try to do that. And there's no reason you can't use an unwater soluble version. Just want to show you guys a few versions of compost tea bags. So you can literally use a crew sock. You can use pantyhose. They work very well and they're very cheap. If you want, you can spend $18 on a compost tea bag. The one thing I do like about this guy is it has buckle straps, so you can fold it down. I've had a lot of bleaches where all my organic material was free floating. Remember, acids break things down, so that pantyhose after 5 or 10 tea brews is probably going to break. So there are some pretty fancy bags on the market. This one is a pump filter bag, so this is designed for like a hydroponic setup. This goes around the pump to keep perlite and debris out of the pump. These are a little bit more cost effective at $14. But what I've also had a lot of good luck doing is just go down to Jerry's at the paint department and ask for paint bags. They're used for straining paint, and they're $3. They really do a good job. So, compost tea recipe. This is Ryan's recipe. Ryan Stanley, one of our co-owners. So, this is a very basic tea recipe. We can't take all the credit. We just wrote it down and are sharing it with you guys. But this is what we've played with over the years. If you want to flip, I think it's page 3 or 2. So you always start, 2, thank you. So you always start with the water. I've got a batch of tea brewing right here. I'm sure some of you saw it as it came around the room. So if you're using a 5-gallon bucket, only fill it to 4 gallons. If you're using a 50-gallon bucket, only fill it to about 47 gallons because the goal is a nice foamy head. And oftentimes you'll come back to your brew setup and there's a huge mess. It's not easy to clean up. So make sure you have at least 1/4 to 1/3 at the top there on a small container. On a larger container like a 50, just give yourself about 3 to 5 gallons of relay at the top though.
I have an oxygen generator I used to exercise. Can I put that oxygen from that into the tea brewing?
I don't see why not. Is it a powerful stream where it might be too much agitation?
No, well, you can adjust it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's almost pure oxygen.
Well, yeah, I would love it.
And you like that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because the goal in actively aerated compost tea is aerobic bacteria, right? And we'll talk about anaerobic ferments here in just a little bit. So you start.
This is an arrow.
This is an aerobic tea, indeed. And that's what I'm going to really focus on today, because the anaerobic ferments are not necessarily for the beginning gardener. Things can go really wrong and you can cause a lot of problems. All right, so you're going to fill the bucket, leave a little bit of space for that foamy head that you're working to develop. So fill this is 3 gallons, so I only have about 2.5 gallons in here. Again, equal parts worm castings to compost. I definitely encourage you to use your own compost from your backyard. If you're not already composting, come chat with us at either store location and we can help you get set up with a simple 3-bin system. It works incredible and it'll save you a lot of money on fertilizer costs year to year. And then of course the molasses. So I'm doing a tablespoon per gallon, so 2 ounces for my 4-gallon bucket here. And then of course Poseidonzyme, and that's going to be an excellent source of fulvic and kelp to jumpstart your teas. And then I use a little bit of the Zeus juice, again for the humic acid content. And that is going to be very, very small application rate, about a teaspoon per gallon of water that you're using. And you're going to bubble this for 24 to 36 hours. What you'll notice is within the first 24 hours, you start to get this foamy head. And I'm going to pass the jar around just so y'all can smell it if you want. Good actively aerated compost tea should smell sweet and earthy. If it smells funky and you didn't put cow manure in there, something went wrong. So beware. I will pass this around. Please don't take a sip. It's non-pathogenic. Y'all signed a waiver. Here you go. But it should smell sweet, earthy. It should look and feel alive. It should have a frothy foam head on it. They call it the root beer head. But more than just the foam, you want to see bioactivity, bio-slime. So on our compost tea brewer out front, on your guys' way out, you'll notice that there's a scum on top of the white foam, and that's poo. I'm going through my life cycle and I'm reproducing and excreting things. So that's a really good sign of life. Now if you just get the foam head and you don't see that scum, check your ingredients. There are some molasses products that have foaming agents in them. So you think you're doing this awesome job brewing up life, and really you just brewed up aloe or yucca water and it's foaming, or soap. So just be mindful of that. And then there are different times that you can harvest your tea. If you really just wanted to get microbes in quick, you could do a quick 24-hour brew and then dilute it. Compost tea should be diluted to the color of weak iced tea. Very scientific for you. That generally works fine. That can be anywhere from 1:1 to 1:10 to, if you're doing a EM or bokashi inoculation, 1:100 for dilution ratio. Again, you're sending in millions of little soldiers, so it doesn't take much, and you can dilute it very, very far down to get it spread across your garden. So once we've got the tea ready, I'm going to check it at 24 hours, I'm going to check it at 36 hours. You probably don't want to pull it after 72 hours. Most of the sugars and food sources will have been consumed at that point, and if I had inadequate aeration, things could rot. So you definitely want to harvest it within the 2 to 3 day window. That's prime time. After 48 hours, again, like I shared earlier, sometimes I'll just rejuvenate it with a little extra sugar, get that bacterial population back up, and then send it out into the garden. So if you do come back after 24 hours and you don't have a foam head and things aren't smelling good, it's time to start checking the temperature. So temperature of your water is everything. It is, I would say, just as important as the quality of your water. So we definitely want to stay within the safe range of about 70 to 75. Now you'll still have successful tea at 68 and at 76, but a lot of these thermometers have variants that you can't trust. So I like to hit that intermediary zone, 70 to 75, and I find that 72, 74 is usually my sweet spot. If you have good aeration, that should also be circulating your water so that products aren't settling to the bottom and not being evenly mixed. Yes, very nice.
Did you say 72?
72, yeah. Yeah, 70 to 75 would be the range. Once you get much above 78, if there is inadequate aeration, if you have under 8 parts per million of dissolved oxygen, you run the risk of growing anaerobic bacteria. And that can be quite a problem.
What are you using?
So this is the pump that you all got last month. So this is a dual outlet dimmable pump. So I can ramp this up, I can ramp this down. probably won't hear much of a change with this volume of water. The other thing you'll notice is I have it on an insulated cardboard box, because this is really loud. You can get quite a lot of noise. In my kitchen where we brew, because I love the sound of the bubbles, I hang it from the bottom of a shelf off a bungee cord so that the pump doesn't make a lot of sound. But yeah, this is just a dual port. I think it's a 144 GPH air pump with 2 air stones. So before you guys came in, I was using one of my old air stones to start the bubbling process, and nothing came out of it. And you all might remember who attended last month's class, these need to be replaced. They need to be cleaned and they need to be replaced. I'll hook up the bad ones at the end just so y'all can see the difference, but they don't push air.
Can you over aerate?
To the point of over agitating and blowing a hole in your sock, and I've done that. So yes. Usually it's an agitation issue more than it is an oxygen issue. I don't think you're going to be able to achieve a ppm level high enough where it would be a problem in our home setups or even in a commercial setup. But agitation is the fear. You can make a mess or, yeah, your sock could get destroyed. We would be doing an anaerobic ferment at that point, and I'm going to touch on that real briefly here. So there's a lot of other ingredients. The recipe, Ryan's recipe I've given you is very, very basic. It does great indoors, also does great outdoors. But if you want more diversity, you should bring in more food and you should bring in more diverse sources of microbes. So again, your backyard compost is going to have a lot of native microbes, species that like to live in our environment and do a really good job in our particular temperature and humidity range in the coastal valley. You can also start bringing in different ingredients like fish, bone, guanos tend to be pretty popular in compost tea as well, manures, and different plant material for ferments. And then of course all the different microbes that you can inoculate with make a big difference. We talked a little bit about bokashi and EM at prior classes, so the one I wanted to highlight today was insect frass. Has anybody worked with insect frass before? Oh boy, you're gonna love this. So does anybody know what frass means? Thank you. Did you get Azos yet? You got Azos. Okay. So yeah, this is their poop, and it's also their exoskeletons, and it's also some bedding material that they're being farmed in. And so the exoskeleton brings in a compound called chitin. And chitin is incredible at thickening up cell wall structure, so it makes it way harder for that powdery mildew spore to anchor down. It makes it way harder for that spider mite to take a bite. So it's like a silica product where you're thickening up that cell wall. And because of the poo, you're getting a 222 on your NPK. So this is a really great thing to add. If you're using it indoors, you definitely want to cook it down. Those of you who were here at my super soil class, it needs to be cooked for several months before that chitin is available. Or you can jumpstart it in composting and brew it much faster. So I wanted to talk about fermented plant extracts really briefly. So I've had a lot of fun playing with these at home. Again, start with your goal. Do I want to get microbes in there? Do I want plant growth regulators from alfalfa that I'm growing on my property? Do I want vitamins? Do I want a heavy nitrogen tea, a heavy phosphorus tea, calcium? Things like buckwheat and silica and horsetail are loaded with calcium. They send a huge deep taproot into the earth. You're able to pull those less mobile nutrients into the plant tissue. So they're very, very useful. So choose that goal and then locate your inputs. One of my favorite fermented flower and fruit extract ferments that I made last year was right around mid-July, almost this time last year. And I had all my spent peas that had gone to seed, and I had cherries, and I was deadheading my sunflowers and my calendula, and I brought all these flowers and fruits in from my garden. And I got them in a big 25-gallon bucket and filled it with dechlorinated water. And then I inoculated it with some of Dragonfly Earth Medicine's products. Their inoculants are really diverse and do a really good job with jumpstarting that breakdown process. I could have also used a lactobacillus culture. I could have added a little bit of bokashi, thank you. Something that is microbial that will start breaking the dry organic inputs down.
Have you gotten any experience with fermenting comfrey and then using that in teas?
Yes.
How does that work?
Amazing. I did an anaerobic ferment with comfrey, and I did not bring it back to an aerobic state, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. It was on a farm I worked at with the Quakers in Northern California, and they taught me that comfrey speeds up cell division, and like it does for our skin, it helps with wounds. So we did a transplant comfrey tea, and we would water it and call it transplants. And knowing what I know now, it just kind of blew me away because we were just rotting it in a trash can, and we never bubbled it. And it's fine. Outdoors, there's enough diversity to...
You can just directly add that. But you can put it in tea though as well.
You could, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would be great for transplants, cuttings. Absolutely, I love comfrey.
Put it on your body, it smells.
Oh yes, indeed. Ooh yeah, and anaerobic comfrey ferments are nasty, like 50 feet from your front door at least. So yeah, find those inputs that are locally available. Know your neighbors. If your neighbor sprays Roundup and it drifts onto your lawn clippings and you put that in your ferment, you're gonna have glyphosate in your tea. So just be very careful. Know what you're using and where it's coming from.
Find out recipes for plant ferments on
Yes. Dragonfly Earth Medicine is one of my favorite resources. I didn't put it on your handout, so I'd write that down. Dragonfly Earth Medicine. They have an amazing farm up in British Columbia, and they use a lot of Korean natural farming techniques, probiotic farming, and they have free education on the Instagram where they'll give you very detailed recipes for these types of ferments. Again, you can use bokashi, lactic acid bacteria, any kind of a microbial jumpstart to help break all that dry material down. And what will happen after about 7 to 10 days, it's going to stink to high heaven, but that material will have been broken down such that there are now water-soluble, plant-usable food in that tea. So after that 7 to 10 day anaerobic ferment, then I'm going to bring my air stones back in, and I'm going to rebubble it for about 24 hours. Then I'm going to strain it, then I'm going to dilute it, then I'm going to administer it either as a foliar spray or water in it. And again, what's beautiful about nature is right in the middle of summer, when our cannabis plants are going to start putting on flower, my tomato plants need a little extra phosphorus boost, there is an abundance of phosphorus on my property because the goal is closed loop, right? I put one shot in that has bone meal and rock dust that adds phosphorus, and then the plant consumes it and stores it, and then I grab that cherry and I put it back in and I ferment it down, and we just keep that cycle going. The compost tea is really freeing, and it really adds to the sustainability of your garden. So again, I wish I could go down the rabbit hole on that, but that's all we've got time for on the plant ferments. But Dragonfly Earth Medicine is a great resource. The Probiotic Farm Alliance is a great resource.
Awesome. Is there a restroom I can use?
Yes, there is. Just to the hall and then take the first left. Yeah, sure thing.
I'm sorry.
Definitely depends on what it is. So microbes. So if it were a fishbone meal with a very high population of microbes and there was no other food present, let's say it was just fishbone in water and you were trying to ferment it, I mean, honestly, that could take anywhere from a month to 6 months to have all the phosphorus and calcium become available.
I'm talking about putting it into the compost before you put the compost in the bag.
Not the tea, but the compost bin.
Like if you have compost that you're using for brewing, you mix that in and cook it in.
So you put fish bone meal in your compost.
Into the compost,
Uh-huh.
and then mix that and wait how long?
Totally depends on what microbes are present. So if I was sprinkling my compost pile with bokashi, 2 beautiful weeks.
Yeah.
If it was just native inputs and red wigglers doing all the work, it can take 3 to 6 months or longer.
So you can save the granulars for primary soil and then use these inoculants that are more effective.
Yes, and the granulars can go in your sock. So
I just don't know if I'm wasting like some of the granulars I've been using as an experiment.
Sure. Yeah, and some of this will touch back on our super soil class, but basically any dry goods that you put into your soil that you want to be available within that first month should be pre-broken down. So in my sock, before this goes in the bucket, I'm going to be adding my worm, castings, my compost, and any other dry goods. So say I didn't get a water-soluble kelp and I got the dry kelp meal, that's going to go in my bag because I don't want to strain it out later. Any other inputs that you wanted to go in the bag, like glacial rock dust, fishbone meal, they definitely could go in the bag. but it would be hard for me to determine exactly how long it would take, not knowing exactly what microbial matrix you're working with. But bokashi is insanely fast, you guys. It'll break down cat litter, it'll break down bone, it'll break down dairy within a matter of a few weeks if temperatures are right.
What would be the negatives of not using the bag? I read to not use it unless you were going to foliar spray or something.
It's a really good question. So if you're going to water it in and you don't care about straining and having that good top dress of organic material, don't worry about it necessarily. But there are some species of microbes that like to colonize on a surface area. So if I give them the sock and I give them organic material, they have a better chance of chaining up and starting a colony. Where if they're constantly just getting agitated and blasted, they may not have that chance to chain up. So I do try to keep my dry goods in here whenever possible. All right. So a couple other things I just wanted to go over. Again, the air stones. Did y'all see the big 55-gallon drum brewing out front? So we do have compost tea available for y'all for sale today, but I really encourage you to go home and make it yourself within 24 hours. But at the bottom of that big drum is this awesome bad boy pump. So this is EPDM plastic. It's a forever stone. We haven't tested that past 3 years, but we're working on it. But basically, instead of changing my air stones out every couple of months, or if I'm a tea brewer weekly every month, this can be cleaned with peroxide and a toothbrush or a mild nylon scrub brush. This can be operated off like a 500 GPH pump all the way up to an 1100 GPH pump, and this moves serious air. And we build these ourselves here at Constant Gardener, so this is a cement base. There's literally cement in here so that it doesn't fit to the top. And then depending on what size pump you have, we can adapt your barb fitting and the tubing to get to the right size. But if you're brewing in a 50-gallon drum or more, $65, my friends, this is amazing, and you'll have this for a long time.
Also, talking about the different sizes, I read that the recipes weren't, you couldn't extrapolate them out. 5 gallons, you couldn't get it at 15, you just triple everything.
Oh, you can with the simple recipe that I've given you. Yeah. If you scale that up to like 2,500, let's talk. All right. I wanted to touch on containers really briefly too. So the 55-gallon drums that we have out front, we do sell those. If you have ideas that you'd like to see implemented, we can put a spigot on the bottom, we can cut the top off for you, put a hinge on it. If you take one home today, you will have to cut the top out to get that surface area. But they're food grade plastic, they're repurposed from Glory Bee, and so they generally come with free honey or molasses in the bottom. You want to hose that out. But yeah, they do a great job. Food grade plastic buckets do a great job. At home I have, I believe it's a 25 or 30 gallon. It's one of those laundry buckets with the rope handles. Those do a really good job, and I'm just able to move that about. You can also scale that up to a 275 gallon shuttle for larger outdoor applications. And we do sell those. You just want to give us a little bit of a heads up. And those can be palleted around the forklift. So they do an amazing job. Let's check out the register at the end. I'll quote you wrong. So those are a really great way to go. Also, people will go to livestock stores like Coastal and buy those big basins for livestock feed and for water. They work really well. I do recommend food grade plastic. Stainless steel should be okay, but they're a little harder to clean out down the road and they will rust. So yeah, choose wisely. Any other questions about containers?
Just a suggestion, if you're gonna get that air stone that you showed,
Yeah.
make sure you get a straight bucket, not a taper. They don't fit in the bottom of the taper.
Thank you. You need surface area to get that guy in there. Yeah, definitely. And with your air pumps, I mentioned this last month at the Art of Watering, but I just want to remind people that the air pump must always be above the water level. So you want to remember why?
Yeah, the cyclone.
Lower hands. There's going to be a prize.
You don't flood it on site.
Yes. Nice work. Yeah. So the answer is back siphoning. So if there's a power interruption, I'm out in the country, that happens a lot, and that power interrupts, it's going to create a siphon that will back feed the water into my pump and burn out the heater. That is not warrantyable, you guys, and they know what that looks like when it happens. So always above the water level, very important. All right. So I wanted to give you guys a couple local brewing resources. Of course, Dragonfly Earth Medicine online, incredible. They're global, and they have quite a mission and a lot of information to share, so definitely check them out. Of course, here at Constant Gardener, we have just about every single ingredient that you would need. So feel free to check in with us about different recipes. Bill at Backyard Farmer, has anybody gone down there and checked him out? We get our chickens there every year. He's a great guy. They have a local compost source by a company called the Garden Starters. And I've given them to you as a resource on past handouts. But they have a small farm and they do their own worm castings and their own compost. And it's small batch, but they've taken it to market in adult capacity. So for me, that's ideal. I love what Lane and Rexius are doing with repurposing all of our waste. I think that is so important. But personally, I don't want my neighbor's Roundup, your diseased rhododendron, and a bunch of bark in my soil. I'm going to try to build a little bit different structure at home. So the small batch is really great, very consistent. They use horse manure as their base for their compost, and I grew my biggest pumpkin ever last year with it. So definitely encourage you to check that resource out. Garden Starters.
And Erika, you mentioned the probiotic plan, something I missed that.
Probiotic Farmers Alliance. They have quite a web presence. And then Earthford Soil Science. Has anybody heard of these guys? Anybody made it to Campus Science Club last month? They did a great talk. So they're just a hop and a skip up the road, up 99 here, and they do compost tea testing. This is really exciting because I can give you all these great recipes and you can go home, but you know, the bacteria that are on your hands, the bacteria that is in your hair, the water that you're using is all going to change the makeup of your compost tea. So it's really interesting to find out at the end what you've done. You can hop online and Google image, what does a bacteria look like at 100 times magnification, and you can scope it out yourself, and I definitely encourage you to do that. But if you want a genus species breakdown, call Earthford. They're amazing. And their tests range from $20 to about $300, depending on what you're looking for and the size of your samples. Teas would have to be overnighted. So you either have to take a Sunday drive up there yourself or pay the overnight shipping fees, but then they'll give you a detailed report.
Do they go over NPK with that?
They will do soil too as a separate test.
Soil, or would they, because we do like a nutrient tea, or try to do a nutrient tea, would they test the nutrients in that said tea?
They would. NPK, CA, micronutrients, and then biology, I believe. Their website, earthboard.com, has a ton of information. They're doing some amazing stuff up in Corvallis. These folks are responsible for finding bacteria that are right now helping to remediate the damage in pollution. I mean, the stuff that's coming out of Oregon just blows my mind. So really great resource to check out. And then lastly, your backyard. That is the best resource if the goal again is sustainability and doing this yourself. What's in season? What's flowering? What spent leaves or grass clippings are available to me this week, and plan it out seasonally. And again, the beauty of nature is when I need nitrogen, there's a lot of green leafy material around in my garden. When I need phosphorus and calcium, there's a lot of fruits and flowers I can deadhead and ferment down. So much of what we need already exists right here in our soil. Mycos, the species that they put in there, Glomus introdioices, that's found here natively. So scoop up a handful of forest floor, add your compost from your backyard, throw in a little worm castings, and you've got an incredible diverse package of mycos there.
It's biodynamic idea that whatever the soil needs, those plants appear. Yeah, so if you have a certain weed that's predominating in your garden, it's there for a reason.
I believe that so strongly, I really do. For instance, stinging nettle, which is a great plant to use for ferments. Well, sometimes I don't put my gloves on and I get stung. Well, right next to it is growing dock. And I can just mash that up, make a quick poultice, and I'm good. Nature definitely coordinates, and we're trying to get back to that place of symbiosis here. And that's what rejuvenating dead soils will bring to your garden.
On reusing plants, we have a grapevine that has powdery mildew on it, and I bought a spray of putting that stuff. I usually just put it in the trash or burn it out. Does that propagate that stuff? Putting it in like a fermentation?
There are ways to remediate that. You would just want to make sure that you came in so aggressively that the good guys outweighed the bad guys, for sure. With powdery mildew specifically, yeah, I mean, I try to contain that because it's an airborne spore. So, I mean, if you're able to black bag it and then send it to the green waste and ship it off to Lane, that would be probably the cleanest path. The other thing I've done is I'll keep a bottle of peroxide with me in the garden, or a diluted milk and water solution, and I'll spray that plant that I'm going to remove before I remove it. If it's milk, I just made all those spores really sticky, and if it's peroxide, I just kill them all.
Well, what I'm really wondering about is plant diseases in general. What I'm thinking is when you pick up these leaves and stuff that are falling up these plants, you know, black spot, or you know, there's a whole bunch of these
I hear
diseases
you.
that are. I don't want to put that into my
Right.
compost necessarily. I don't know.
I see what you're saying. It would be safer not to put them in your compost that you're using on valuable food and flowers. Yeah, I try to keep certain things out of my compost bin, and diseased plant material, weeds. I'm not monitoring temperature close enough to guarantee I hit 160 before I put my compost out in my garden. So a lot of pathogens will biodegrade or get burnt up at certain temperatures and won't be harmful anymore, but you'd have to keep a really close eye on that. But you absolutely can remediate that. It just has to have enough good guys to outcompete the bad.
It seems like that anaerobic fermentation that you were talking about might be pretty effective at destroying pretty much everything.
Yeah, especially if there's bokashi involved. Bokashi is so aggressive. Roberly was talking about human health earlier. So EM1, Effective Microorganisms 1, is a formulation of bacteria and yeast by Dr. Higo from Japan many, many years ago. You can also buy EM for humans. So you can re-inoculate your own gut. And Terraganics is the company you can buy that from online. So yeah, just looking around and making sure that you... Terraginx. Unfortunately, EM1 is stop sold in Oregon right now. We have the most rigid Department of Ag, and I love them for protecting our state. But yeah, there's a lot of politics around labels, and if you get one word wrong, they'll pull your product from market. So you can only get EM online right now. There are a few guys making it locally, if you can connect with them. But lastly, I just wanted to round our bases with the most common mistakes. And I definitely don't want to plant seeds of fear. It would be really hard for you guys to mess this up. Really, really hard. There would have to be really bad pathogens already present in a foul, stagnant water source. As long as you're throwing a bubbler in there, you start with good food, and you follow the application rates, you're going to be fine. But here's where a lot of people go wrong. So insufficient aeration. So either it'll rot, you'll get anaerobic bacterial growth, which you would not want to apply to your plants until you had brought it back. The anaerobes are the ones that are mostly responsible for disease. So try to keep that out by hitting that 8 parts per million on your oxygen. Another big mistake is too much nitrogen. You get a lot of microbial die-off if you throw a bunch of blood meal in there. Even feather meal, if it has enough time to cook down and be digested, can burn and be too hot for microbes. So keep nitrogen under 5% is kind of my threshold. Not enough sugar. That's a really big problem. Bacteria and the fungi really depend on sugar, so if you quarter the application rate that I'm recommending, you may not see that nice foamy head. You can come back after 24 hours, add a little bit more, and you should see an explosion there of life. Now you can also do too much sugar. There is a threshold. So if I'm just spoon feeding my bacteria sugar all day, they don't have to work for it. They're just lazy on the couch getting fed. So I want to keep them in good form and in good shape and give them just enough to replicate and colonize, but not too much that they get lazy. So stick to the application rates and don't go too heavy on molasses. Oh, magnetic drive water pumps. So this is kind of controversial too. A lot of people feel like it's not a problem, and a lot of microbial reps I've talked to do. So I just X'd out the water pump. So we've only been talking about air pumps, most of you will have noticed. Now water pumps use a magnetic drive impeller, and that can cause two problems. One, it can actually grab minerals and pull them out of suspension because it's magnetic. The second thing it can do is it can break up the yeast chains that you've been colonizing in your compost tea sock. So it's generally not recommended to go through a mag drive impeller pump for compost tea. But again, even if you break up those chains, and your only way of irrigating your 2-acre garden is through irrigation and you have to go through a pump, the benefits will still outweigh the harm that will be done as it passes through that pump. But again, just be gentle with your microbes whenever possible. They need moisture, they need sugar, they need oxygen. If you supply all 3 in abundance, you're going to be fine. Any questions on air pumps or air stones or different additives there? Okay.
I got a question real quick.
Yeah.
You were saying that once it does go anaerobic, you can bring it back. And you're saying just by adding sugar and re-encouraging the air and everything, and it'll bring it back. Is that at like a 12-hour period, or are you just waiting for the stink to go away? Or?
Let your nose be your guide. And throw some bokashi in there. So yeah, sugar, air, and then really aggressive microbes. Something that will eat the bad guys.
So when you're doing something more like biodynamic style with like Neville or comfrey, to ferment it first, would you let it do the anaerobic and then take that and then add that to the okay, so it's 2 steps.
Yep. So the anaerobic ferment is generally 7 to 10 days of just still stagnant, hot, warm water.
Cool.
And then at day 10, if you feel like things have broken down enough and you get a nice funk smell, then I would add a lab culture, a lactic acid bacteria culture, bokashi culture, add a bubbler, and then bring it back. So it's a 2-step process, exactly.
You know, I studied biodynamics years ago, and the idea of it was that you create a living soil, so you create a vital plant. So when you eat the vital plant, you yourself become vital. Yeah, so you had the questionnaire, what you would like to learn from this. My interest was nutrition. So this seems to be very important. If we want to be really healthy, that we feed our plants in such a manner, and the soil first, that the plants we eat can really rejuvenate themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're doing it on your own property with your own inputs, that just brings it all closer to home. So temperature is another place people generally go wrong. If you're trying to brew compost tea in the winter months, you're definitely going to want a tank heater. Some sort of a fish aquarium heater will work fine. Depending on the volume, you may need something a little more industrial. But these do a great job, and you can dial it right into your sweet spot temperature, which again is between about 70 and 75. Those will keep you warm, but you don't want to be too warm. And that's another place things go wrong. So anaerobes love heat. They love the warm, stagnant water. That's why you always smell that funk coming out of a pond or a peat bog. So it's really important that you're keeping that temperature in that perfect range. And lastly, the place I've gone wrong, and I've seen a lot of people go wrong, is you set up your tea brewer, you're super stoked, you go spend that day on the coast, you come back, and there is this gigantic, foamy, terrible mess everywhere. And the foam, the scum, you need some major elbow grease to scrub that off the floor. I'm not kidding. So again, lower the volume by a good quarter or a third in your container. Anticipate that you're going to get a frothy head. Sometimes you'll outdo yourself, and what's normally a nice 8 to 10 inch head will be a 24-inch head because you added some yucca at the end. Now, it's not up on here, but I just wanted to remind folks, don't add foaming agents to your compost tea until the very end. And again, there are some molasses products and some kelp products that do have foaming agents in there. A, it kind of confuses your progress. B, it can make a huge mess. So I love yucca. It's a great fungal food, but add it at the end.
With the molasses, it's really the only way to tell if it has a foaming agent if it has scum on top of the foam.
Yeah, like I bubble it before adding the microbes and see. The molasses blueberry doesn't, the hybrids. I can't remember the name of the brand. I think it was from Humboldt Nutrients or Mother Earth, and it was super foamy out of the gate.
Is there can you overdo compost tea? Like, you know, if you use too much of it, if you used it to like as a base for your nutrients instead of just plain water? I mean, is there a way to
Depending on what type of tea it was. So if it was a high nitrogen tea, yes, you could overdo it. If it was a high phosphorus tea, it'd be pretty hard to overdo it. If it was a heavy microbial tea, again, it would be really hard for that delivery to ever be negative unless you took the scales on diversity balance. But for the most part, if you're sending in good guys, you're going to get more good guys. Now, trichoderma, there is some evidence that trichoderma and bokashi don't play well together. So again, I'm not a microbiologist. I can't predict all the behavior, but there's a lot of good resources where we can get good information. One other resource I wanted to share, has anybody heard of Elaine Ingham? She's kind of Oregon's compost tea grandmother. Yeah. So she is the teacher of the students who started Earthport. Again, that's why I trust their company so well. And Elaine Ingham is very famous for compost tea brewing. Definitely recommend that you check her and her work out as well. And she provides a lot of good information, not so much about competition, but about microbial die-off and ratios between fungal and bacterial dominance. Elaine Ingham. And I think Ingham is I-N-G-H-A-M.
Why this granulated sugar from honeybee in brown bags? Would that be okay? It's like light brown, not quite as processed as white. Is that okay instead of the?
Is it more like a turbinado, where
It's a
that
little lighter than
coarser?
turbinado,
Okay.
but it's not quite white.
Yeah. And you can dissolve it in hot water, okay?
Yeah.
That should be fine. Yeah. A lot of the products on the market too, the bottle-fed nutrients, they use cane sugar as their sucrose source, so I don't see why.
Or any sucrose, really.
I believe coconut sugar is supposed to be one of the highest in amino acids and minerals.
Oh, I believe it. It'd be
As
amazing.
much as or more than molasses.
Yeah. Yeah, on a small batch
And it's
basis.
very inexpensive.
Oh, good.
You
Okay, I was
can buy
wondering.
it in powdered form at like a kilo for $2 and something a pound. It's
That's
big
great.
chocolate too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, coconut brings a lot to the picture. Beautiful. So those are some of the places people go wrong, but again, I just wanted to leave you guys with the confidence that if you have an air stone and a good air pump, and you have sugar and you have compost, you're gonna brew a microbial tea, and it's gonna be awesome. Try not to make a mess. Play with different inputs, and then be aware of your season. Am I in veg or am I in bloom right now? What do I want to focus on? Do I have a small powdery mildew outbreak? Do I need to have a very bacterial dominant tea that has aggressive defenders against disease? So choose your goal, select your inputs, and then come chat with us if you have any questions, and please connect with those local resources. Oregon is an amazing state for livening up our soil and bringing the compost tea back, because it's just amazing. This is old information, and it's lovely to see this resurgence, especially among the younger generation, to bring these practices back into place, because together we are setting a national standard for what organic means in the state of Oregon. So thank you all again for your attention today and for coming down on this gorgeous Sunday. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.